Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And our guest is Steve Toth, who is a candidate for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District in Texas, if I've got that right. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Great to be with you guys.
All right. Well, let's see. Yes, I do have my Fat Albert here, and I assume you have your scrolling banner there. That's just
ready for
all right. All right. Well, let's kind of get right into it here on FAIRtax Power Radio this evening. And actually, let me kind of put out this little reminder one time to folks who may be watching this for the first time that the National Fair Tax Organization, Americans for Fair Taxation, and the Florida Fair Tax Educational Association that I'm associated with are both, nonprofit, tax exempt organizations. And as such, we are not allowed to do any electioneering or trying to influence people to vote one way or the other. So what we are allowed to do, and what we are doing today in this program, is that we are allowed to educate and inform people about where various candidates stand on the various issues. And that's why we have Steve with us. And John Gaver tells me you like the fair tax, sir.
Yes, sir, I sure do. I'm sick and tired of the IRS and how it's been weaponized against conservatives. And that's the only way to put it. It has been weaponized against the conservative movement, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, but what people don't understand, if if one side can weaponize the IRS against the other, that can go the other way. I mean, there may very well come a day people who are applauding the fact that the IRS is going after people whose political opinions they don't like may find themselves on the wrong end of the shotgun barrel one of these days if the other side gets in power good and decides to do the same thing back to them. So the very fact that a federal agency with that kind of power and that kind of magnitude can and has been, I mean, remember, we're old enough to remember President Nixon, who was using the IRS against his political enemies, which was on the other side of the aisle. So no matter which side of the aisle you're on, you should be in favor of getting rid of the income tax in the IRS.
Yeah, but here's the problem: is that we play nice. Honestly, that is the problem with the Republican Party. And my staff has heard me say this. My friends have heard me say this. When Republicans win elections, they take office. When Democrats win elections, they wield power. Mm-hmm. And they're willing to do anything and everything because the ends justify the means. They are people that are completely amoral. And for them to use the IRS against innocent people, they've demonstrated their willingness to do it. They have done it. We won't do that because we have a moral foundation. And so, yeah, so the very existence of the IRS means that there will always be this threat to our freedom. Because in a moment, with the IRS, you're guilty until proven innocent. At any time they can step in, freeze your accounts, steal your money. You're guilty until proven innocent, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, a lot of people don't fight it because it costs more to fight it than it would to just pay it.
Yeah, the federal government has limitless resources at their disposal, and we've seen it over the years, just how badly they've screwed and hurt people. It's awful.
You're challenging Dan Crenshaw in Texas's 2nd Congressional District. Tell us a little bit about what it's like to go through a primary, because you hear that term a lot now, that we're going to primary this person or that person. And Republican or Democrat, it doesn't seem to matter to me that you're going in there to break up a monopoly, if you will. You've heard the term uniparty. Yeah. Well, so what's it like to challenge even Representative Crenshaw? But what's it like? How do you go about running?
So my race is very typical, and you can look at my race and just say it's generally the very same as pretty much any challenger to an incumbent, which is incumbents. Like my incumbent has a 98% name recognition number, right? 98% of the people in Congressional District 2 that are going to vote in the primary know who he is. So only 2% don't know who he is. 60%, when I started my campaign, 60%, 60+% did not know who I was, right? And yet, like an unfavorable incumbent, like Crenshaw is, he has an unfavorable rating of 53% in Montgomery County, 43% in Harris County. So what these incumbents do is they have an unlimited amount of money from the swamp. And so the DC swamp, anytime super PACs get involved, they have to disclose within 24 hours of running ads. Well, the DC swamp 4 days ago announced that they're putting $500,000 into his campaign. And then another political action committee announced that they're going to pick up $100,000 to do radio, and another swamp picked up that they're going to do $250,000. And so right now what they're doing is they're running ads against me, calling me a rhino, which I've got I've been endorsed by Young Conservatives of Texas every year as the number one conservative in the Texas House. Rice Scorecard, which it's nonpartisan, but what the Rice Scorecard does is they rate you on your voting record as to how many times you vote with Republicans versus Democrats. Last year I was the number one Republican in the Texas House for voting with Republicans. This year I was number 3. Year before, 3 sessions ago, I think I was number 4. I mean, I've always got one of the most conservative voting records. Yet Dan Crenshaw and the swamp, the Uniparty, are calling me a rhino, which you can't run to the right of me. It's impossible. I've been endorsed by Donald Trump in 2022 and 2024. I've fought leadership, but again, it's just, this is the way the Uniparty does things. This is the way they treat challengers. They don't want anyone coming in from the outside that's going to be disruptive. The whole idea of disruption is just an anathema to them. They need to keep things the status quo. And that's honestly, it's one of the reasons why Donald Trump has been so popular. It's because he is a disruptor. He's a total disruptor. And he has survived the warfare that they have fought against him, that they've unleashed against him. And that scares them even more.
I got 2 words for you: term limits. There we go. All right, let's kind of steer this back to the FAIRtax. I'm curious to know personally how you learned about the FAIRtax and what about the FAIRtax really caught your attention, caught your eye, and impressed you about it. You know, we've already mentioned that it gets rid of the Internal Revenue Service, but there's a lot more to this thing. How did you learn about it? And, you know, if you could list the top 3 or 4 things about the FAIRtax that really, ring your bell, what would that be?
I've known about the FAIRtax idea, and I want to say long before I even heard of the organization. It's just been a common sense thing that a consumption tax is the fairest way to do things. And even take the state of Texas right now, right? We have among the highest property taxes in the United States. And I want to see us do away with the property tax and just go with our sales tax, which is a consumption tax. And so 6 years ago, I started working with the Texas Public Policy Foundation, Dr. Vance Ginn. And Vance and I came up with a method that if we would just hold spending to population adjusted for inflation in the state of Texas, the sales tax revenue would grow 8% higher, faster, or more than what we're spending. And you just every single session you buy that down the property tax with a sales tax, and you don't even have to raise the sales tax in the state of Texas. So what it requires is discipline. And the thing probably that I like the most about it is that it creates fiscal handcuffs on lawmakers to force them in many respects to growing government. We grow government without batting an eyelash. And that's why there's so much fraud. That's why Doge found so much money that was being wasted. And guys, the thing that's really frustrating right now, so much of this Doge fraud that they've uncovered, none of it's being cut out of the budget. For the most part, none of it's being cut out of the budget. USA aid is being cut, but that's about it. I mean, it's ridiculous. We're spending, we're not at the point anymore where we're spending our children's money. We're spending our grandchildren's money.
Wow.
It's criminal.
Mm-hmm. All right, Scarborough, your turn.
Um, the challenges with the fair tax being implemented by current representatives, and not only in the House, but also in the Senate. And we talk about it all the time on the program that individuals need to, people in the common man needs to find someone in their community and encourage them to run. You've obviously been a popular representative there in Texas for many, many years. Tell me what, if I were to ask you, let's find somebody in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, in our district here. Now, Virginia Fox, who is our representative in the district that I live in, has been a fair tax supporter in the past. She's yet to resign. But if we were in a place where there wasn't a person who was kind of warm to running on the fair tax, what would you tell them? What would you tell those people in that particular district? How do you go about finding someone? And what's the best way to encourage people to support the fair tax that are running for a particular district anywhere in the country?
Look for people that, I would say, look for people that believe in limited government. I'd say look for people that want to put government back in its box. Look for people that believe in the 10th Amendment and state sovereignty. Look for people that want to shrink down and put Washington, D.C. on a diet. Because that's really truly the only way the fair tax works. It's the way anything works. I mean, the reality is that just we are on a freaking spending spree right now, and you would think that we've got all the money in the world in this, and we don't. And yeah, I'm on intermittent fasting. I take one meal a day, and the federal government needs to be put on an intermittent fasting diet as well, and they need to take money when it's spent by the people that spend it, and that's it, as opposed to these arbitrary tax rates that they put on people, income tax rates.
Well, Marcel, let me get this question out to you before I forget. Assuming that you are elected, can we count on you to co-sponsor the fair tax in the House?
Yes.
That was an easy one.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
You're a small business owner there in the Woodlands.
Yes.
You know a lot of people. You've been living there for a long time. I think I've read since 1997. So you're ingrained.
28 years.
What's it like? What would it be like for your company, your small business, to operate under a national consumption tax, specifically HR 25, the Fair Tax Act?
I think that at the end of the day, it would be significantly easier for us. The amount of work that we have to go through and record keeping and everything else, the amount of money that we pay to tax consultants, CPAs, and tax attorneys. Yeah, I would, man, what that would mean to my wife and I, and as far as the amount of time that this takes, that of record keeping and everything else, we would totally embrace that.
What would it mean for your customers if your cost of doing business, if all of those expenses went away? Your customers would benefit in that as well, I assume.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one point.
Okay.
So, and this goes back to tariffs. Prices are not set on what it costs to produce and deliver a product or services. Prices are based on what the market will bear. Okay. And so I don't believe that. I certainly do not plan on lowering my prices if we do this. We'd make a little bit more money as a company, and that's not a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. I think free market people should be unapologetic that they're making money. That's the goal. If you go into business, you're taking a huge risk, you're taking a huge gamble, and I cannot stand listening to business owners that apologize for making a profit. I just can't.
All right. Now, you see, you have received the president's endorsement. He has,
In 2022 and 2024. I've not been endorsed in this race yet.
okay, well, whatever. Of course, the president, I say what I'm getting at is that he is on record multiple times as wanting to get rid of the income tax, but he keeps talking about tariffs as the replacement for the income tax rather than the fair tax. How do we change his mind? How do we open his eyes to the fact that, hey, tariffs can be manipulated, can be avoided. The fair tax was specifically designed to replace the income tax. How do we get him on board with that idea?
Oh man, you're talking about Trump, right?
Trying to. We trying to get his attention.
Here's the problem. He actually has history on his side. That there was a period of time prior to the income tax when the major revenue source for the United States government were tariffs. And as long as there are countries that are going to be willing to trade unfairly with the United States, tariffs will always exist. And as an example, right now, Japan and Canada won't play fair with us. And so right now there's a 25% tariff on Toyotas coming into the United States from Canada and from Japan. Has the cost of Toyotas gone up 25%? No.
I don't know. I haven't been shopping for one recently.
They're not. They have not gone up one penny, 1%. But the United States is pulling in revenue as a result of it. So I think it's going to be pretty hard to convince Trump that that this is not working. I mean, look, we had 18%. We had 18% inflation under Joe Biden, right? Inflation's in check now, and yet we have tariffs. So it's going to be a tough argument with him, I think.
All
right, Bob, your turn again.
The challenges, you and a lot of people that listen to our program, watch our program, are family oriented.
Right.
They got kids and grandkids. And when you look at a $37 trillion deficit, and you look at tariffs bringing in a certain amount of revenue, and you look at the possibility of cutting expenditures and involving the consumption tax value of the fair tax, when somebody like you gets elected, how do you, I mean, with your values and so on, how do you go about championing that in the midst of what we talked about earlier with the uniparty sort of running the show? Do you think that the skin is coming off of that whole reality the further along we get with the current administration being the big megaphone across the land?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but as far as what I would do when I get there, I'm just going to stand. I believe in this, and this is what I'm going to fight for, and this is how I'm going to influence individuals that I serve alongside.
Let me ask you something else real quick. Out on the campaign trail, you meet a lot of people for sure. How do they react when you stand before them and say, listen, if you vote for me, I'm going to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service. If you vote for me, I will let you bring home your entire paycheck with no withholding and no payroll taxes. If you vote for me, I will see that you never have to file a federal income tax return again. All of the good things that the fair tax does for people. Just what's their reaction? Do they look at you and say, wait a minute, that's a pipe dream, that'll never happen? Or they say, hey, let's go for it?
About half, I'm an idealistic pragmatist, I like to call myself. And so, I'll say that to people, and you will get one of two responses. One is, wow, that'd be great. The other is, oh, look, that's going to be like, rolling a 5,000-pound stone up a hill. But Steve, we've got to try. And if there are enough people that continue to try and they continue to stand for it, eventually we may get it. And I think that needs to be, don't grow weary in doing good. Just because something is difficult doesn't mean you stop trying to do it. So yeah, That's where I'm at.
I would think framing your opponent as a friend of the IRS would be a really savvy political move.
Yeah. Yep. I'm sure it would. I'm sure it would. Yeah.
All right. Uh, okay, Scarborough, your turn again.
Okay, well,
I don't usually have to prompt you to talk. I mean, what's
I've got a few questions, but I have to make sure that we, stay within the educational boundaries.
we got 7 minutes here.
When Steve, when you first said, "Hey, the fair taxes, I'm going to champion," we just heard you say you'll co-sponsor in the next Congress if you're elected. What brought you to the time where you said, I'm going to get behind this? How long has that been? And we may have talked about this a little bit earlier, but
I've been a supporter of it since before I even heard of you guys. I mean, I'm going back to 1994 discussions, 1993. In fact, 1984, before I got married, I had discussions with my brother-in-law about this, that just a fair tax would be what we need, just an income tax, or I'm sorry, a sales tax. I've always believed in this. And you grow more passionate about it. I grew more passionate about it when in 2010, when we had a local Tea Party that was trying to get 501c3 and 501c4 status. And at that time, and I believe it was Lois Lerner from the IRS who was running it then, but she was basically shutting down all the 501c conservative 501c3s and 4s. And that's when we really started to see the weaponization of the Internal Revenue Service. And you're like, okay, this is pissing me off. Now we've got to do something.
I'll tell you what, that you would think that those kind of restrictions on free speech shouldn't be there. But then again, that's another really good reason to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, because if there is no tax, there is no tax to be tax exempt from, and therefore there are no restrictions. I mean, like the ones we have to abide by here as a nonprofit, educational organizations. All of those restrictions go away. You can say what you want to. So the fair tax you can frame as a free speech issue.
It is. And so I go to a church where my pastor is not afraid of the IRS, and my pastor's on a pretty regular basis baits the IRS, says, come on, come after me. Go ahead, try it, go for it. See where that gets you. We're going to fight you. And we need, that needs to be our culture, a willingness to stand up and fight and fight our government. That's what's necessary. They need to be held in check. They need to fear us. We shouldn't be fearing them.
Absolutely. I'll tell you what, all right, say we are educating and not electioneering here, but we will give you the opportunity to mention your campaign website if folks want to come and check you out a little bit farther. Go ahead. What's your web address?
Yeah, www.stevetothforcongress.com, all spelled out. Or if you're feeling really lazy that day, just go to stevetoth.com. It'll take you there as well. But we'd love to have you come and help us out.
All right. Well, I did look at that last night. And one thing I did notice that taxes was one of the issues that you list on your issues section that you're running on. I didn't see a specific mention of the fair tax yet. Can we fix that?
Yeah, sure. No, yeah, I'd be happy to address that.
All right. We'll do that. Okay, Bob, we got about 4 minutes left. One more question for you.
Well, one of the issues on Steve's website is taxes and tariffs. How would you see, because we know tariffs have been a part of American world negotiations for as long as there's been the United States. Tariffs have been there to help fund government services, et cetera. How would a fair tax work with tariffs? And we see how President Trump uses tariffs as a negotiating tool. But that has turned out to be pretty successful and not quite as dangerously damaging to our economy as a lot of folks had earlier predicted. So how do tariffs and fair tax work in your vision, and how would you help bring that understanding to Washington?
I don't know that the two do not work together. There's an old story about a guy that watches his wife cut the end off of ham every single Thanksgiving, and he says, "Why do you cut the end off the ham?" And she said, "Well, because my mom does it." And so at Thanksgiving, when her mom's there, she says, "Why'd you cut the end off the ham?" "Well, it's because my mother did it." And when Grandma walks into the room, the daughter and the mother said, "Grandma, why do you cut the end off the ham?" And she said, "Well, because it's the only way I could fit the ham into that little oven." Right. And so for years, we continue to do stupid stuff simply because it's always been done. And so after World War II, we feared the domino effect of communism and all these nations collapsing. After World War II, we were the only economy standing, right?
Right.
And we had so much strength that we were able to rebuild the free world through the Marshall Program in Europe and Asia. And we left this generation with no debt. And we did, for all intents and purposes, stop the spread of communism. Today, however, these nations are standing strong. They have more economic power and strength in some respects than we do on a per capita basis. And I think the idea that we're going to continue to give them most favored nation trading status to allow them to send their stuff into the United States tariff-free, in that yet our product goes overseas 20, 30 to 100, 200% tariffs is done. I'm done with that. And so that is why I support what President Trump is doing. The two can coexist, and I think they will coexist, hopefully.
All righty. Well, Steve, thank you for taking time with us today. We are just about out of time. We do want to thank you for signing the FAIRtax Candidate Pledge. And if you would like to get your congressman or your candidates to do the same, you can download that pledge from fairtax.org and print yourself out a copy. Take it to your candidates' town hall meetings and see if they'll put their name on the bottom of it. But again, Steve, running for Congress in Texas' 2nd Congressional District. Again, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us today.
You bet, guys. Good to be with you.
Thank you.
All righty, and that is going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching, listening, and sharing the video. We will see you again same time, same channel next week here. But until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
We've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the fair tax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month. On everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.
Why?
Well, we believe taxes should be fair.